So guys, over the last week or so, I've had a bit of time on my hands and I thought, what kind of new content can I bring to the channel? So I've been doing a few throwback cases. So over the last few days, you've seen a couple I've done from London and one of the Gun Brothers from Nottingham. And I hope you enjoyed viewing that content. And what I thought is, rather than dilute platform with that kind of content, why don't I just create a new channel? So guys, in the description below, I'm going to have my new channel called Crimecast. And on there, I'm going to be putting up documentaries, different throwback cases of what's happened in the UK, but also from around the world. Because as I said over the last week, I've been researching and I've got cases and cases that I want to go through. So, guys, link in the description below. Go subscribe to that channel, Crimecast, and I'll put the first story on there on the 1st of January. So, guys, go over there, support, subscribe, and let's take it to another level. So, 1st of January, I'll upload the first video on there. Let's see if we can get to 1,000 subscribers in that time. Respect. Anyway, today's throwback case, check it out. When Nisha Patel-Nasri, an off-duty special constable, was stabbed to death outside her home in May 2006, it was assumed she had been killed after disturbing a burglar or a car thief. The 29-year-old was known as a feisty character who would not back down from confrontation. One of her fellow special constables described her as gobby and said she'd be the first out of the carrier if there was a fight. At the time, Detective Chief Inspector Nick Skowala, who led the investigation, admits he too assumed she had stumbled across a crime in progress, and that theory was given more credence when he learnt Nisha had disturbed two men trying to break into a porch a few days before she had died. So who was Nisha? So Nisha Patel-Nasri, she was a 29-year-old Luton-born Hindu British Indian who grew up in London, and she ran a hairdressing business in her home in Wembley. However, she also volunteered as a special constable in the Met Special Constabulary for 3 years prior to her death. When her husband, Fadi Nasri, learnt that his wife had been stabbed, he remarked to his friend, "Could it be a prank?" Nasri learned of the attack over the telephone while he was out playing snooker with a friend. He went to the house and tried to comfort her in the street while they waited for an ambulance. It was nearly midnight. His wife, Nisha Patel-Nasri, had been stabbed in the leg outside her house with her own kitchen knife, a very large one, and she died of massive blood loss in the street. She was only dressed in her night clothes, and a few days before the incident, Mrs. Patel-Nasri had been alarmed by an attempted break-in into the house. Neighbours first heard her cry, "He's following me." Then, "He stabbed me." There was a great deal of blood on the street, but none inside the house, and the evidence was that she was stabbed in the streets. Witnesses reported seeing two suspicious men at the scene, one in a hoodie running off, the other walking away without turning around to look at the screaming woman in the street. The police appealed for information about these two at the time. Miss Patel-Nasri had reported that a previously burglary attempt had involved two men that she had seen in the porch. The incident occurred in May 2006, and for months the police had no evidence to go by. But in September 2006, they found the knife in a street drain not far from the house, and after searching the CCTV footage of a camera that overlooked the area of the drain, they identified an Audi A4 with a distinctive radio aerial and a missing number plate light, which stopped at the drain for 8 seconds a few minutes after the attack and presumably disposed of the knife. Meanwhile, Fadi Nasri, Nisha's husband, was heartbroken. The widower took part in the television appeal to find the killer, during which he described his wife as having a good heart and calmly declared that somebody has a guilty conscience. Media reports at the time suggested that Nasri and Patel-Nasri appeared to be happy and affectionate. However, she had confided to a friend that she was considering divorcing him. She wanted a baby and had stopped using contraceptive, but he was refusing her advances, claiming to be too tired to have sex. And here, my friends, is where the plot thickens. Nasri was far from being the devoted spouse. In fact, he was more in love with his successful wife's wealth than with her. He was leading a double life. When he was not with Patel-Nasri, he was engaged in a passionate affair with a Lithuanian prostitute. So Fadi Nasri actually used to run an escort business before setting up a limousine firm with the help of his wife, and he began paying for sex with this Lithuanian prostitute, and he ended up falling in love with her. He took her to Egypt, they visited Royal Ascot, He was whining and dining her, and it was described as though that he was spending money like water on his mistress. In the back of his mind, he was determined to leave his wife, but he needed money to fund his lover's expensive tastes. As I said, he spent thousands on jewelry, clothes, lavish hotels, took her to Egypt, and he actually pretended to his wife that he had gone there to see a sick uncle. Could he be behind his wife's murder? What was he to gain from it? Well, he understood that he was to gain £350,000 from a life insurance policy which she had applied for 3 months before her murder. It was understood that Mr. Nasri was madly in debt and madly in love. A very dangerous cocktail. Nasri thought he had planned the perfect murder. He made contact with someone from the London underworld, Roger Leslie, a London drug dealer, who in turn recruited two other men, Jason Jones and Tony Emanuel. And remember when I mentioned the Audi A4 with the distinctive radio aerial and the missing number plate? Well, that was nightclub promoter Tony Emanuel's Audi. So, Tony Emanuel and Leslie, they were arrested on December the 6th. Emanuel told police he had driven a man who goes by the name of Jones to the address as part of the drugs deal. And Jones was arrested 2 days later. When Nasri heard of this, he broke down in tears after he was told about the arrests. However, he was arrested himself on suspicion of dealing drugs, but later, searches showed no traces of drugs in the house or his vehicles. However, police got the breakthrough that they needed when Emanuel released a statement, saying Jones told him he had been in the house and seen piles of cash in the front room, a fact that actually hadn't been released to the public. Until then, the police believed that the killer had confronted Patel-Nasri outside the house following a disturbance, and that she had brought the knife out and been stabbed with it during a struggle. Now, they thought that the killer had come into the property, disturbing the victim who was upstairs, barefoot and in her pyjamas. Meanwhile, Jones had gone into the kitchen at the back of the house, taken the knife, and when she came downstairs, chased her to the front door and stabbed her once, fleeing as she screamed for help, which tallied up with her terrifying cry, "He's following me." It also meant that the killer would have allowed himself in, probably with a set of keys that were missing, pointing the finger of suspicion at her husband, Nasri. The curtains finally closed on Nasri, and it was established that he took out £18,000 in cash and called a phone box which Leslie used regularly in what police believe was a call to arrange payments for the murder. The motive for the murder? Monetary, because he wanted to live an extravagant lifestyle, but he had a failing business, and he saw his wife as nothing but an insurance policy. And it was also revealed in court that Fadi Nasri's father was in a prison in Leicester when he hung himself in 2001, and he was on remand after his girlfriend and her son died in a house fire at their home in Derby. He was accused of dousing them with petrol before setting the house ablaze. And Fadi was actually in talks with legal representatives trying to sue the Leicester prison system because his father hung himself. At the Old Bailey on the 28th of May 2008, after 6 days of deliberation, Emanuel was acquitted, but Nasri, Leslie and Jones were all convicted of murder by a jury majority of 10-2. The following month, Leslie was sentenced to life in prison with a recommended minimum tariff of 18 years, which would keep him in prison until 2026. And both Jones and Nasri were sentenced to life with tariff of 20 years, which would keep them imprisoned until 2028. Mr. Fadi Nasri had thought that he had created the perfect murder, but detectives uncovered this perfect husband was leading a double life and had several motives for killing his wife, including wanting to cash in on a £350,000 life insurance policy. I just want to say rest in peace Nisha Patel-Nasri, and my condolences go out to your family. It's your boy GC. Keep it locked, keep it real.